much for inviting me, Sandy. I was surprised one day when I got a note from my email that I'm being invited to develop a course and teach it, maybe a semester or two after, if it gets approved by the University Council. It's a very, immediately I said yes, because I was ready, I think, for something like this. I've been at this since 1985, in fact, when I got an inkling that something big was going to happen. In fact, I thought it was going to be bloody. That was 1984, in fact. And I thought while they were saying EDSA was not predicted, I got wind of it that something of this nature was going to happen way back in 1984. I was assistant to the chancellor of Dr. Emil Javier. You know, now he is a national scientist. His brother, Eric Javier, was then a young major, or graduate from West Point, who was assigned as chief aide-de-camp of then constabulary chief Fidel B. Ramos. And I was hired by Dr. Javier one day after the first chancellor of this university died. In fact, on a Christmas day, Dr. Abelardo Samonte. And then, anyway, to cut the story short, I found myself being asked by Dr. Javier. In fact, not being asked, he called me. I was already in the information office of Dr. Samonte, and he, one dramatic Board of Regents meeting, no? In 1979, it was announced that he is going to be the next deputy president. And since I was already there, the next day, after he took office, he called me and said, "You are going to be I'm taking you as my assistant to the chancellor." And so from that point on, my life has changed. Okay, I was expecting I would be a development communicator, practicing the trade that my mother started by writing farm and factory stories and so forth. Then one day, after serving Dr. Javier for his whole term, he suddenly, on a Valentine's Day, he surprised everybody by saying he's going to deliver a speech for the whole university, and he asked me to get the auditorium ready. Some of you might remember this. Maybe see Maricel is squinting. Maybe this is new to her. But he announced that he was quitting the cabinet of President Marcos. He was serving also as Minister of Science at the time of President Marcos. His term was during martial law. He started 1979 to 1984. Anyway, 84 was crucial because it came 2 years before the EDSA that we know it. But having been linked to his brother, we have to coordinate sometimes. A university at the time of martial law was something else. Maybe a lot of us have not experienced it. Anyway, I got wind of what was happening because I like shooting. I went to the shooting range and I could hear what people were talking about. There were already some indications that, the camp of Enrile, the camp of Ramos, and of course Marcos, General Ver, were at odds. I sensed it immediately when he was not even telling me, see Dr. Javier, what his reason was for resigning. But I pieced these things together, and I thought it's time to go. And then he took care of us. He was not paying attention to what we were doing. He just trusted people he got to help him. So one day I found myself, I'm already from a research, I don't know what my appointment was then. I think I was a researcher, but I was working as an information officer. All of a sudden, I was associate professor. in the university because an item was made available to me by Dr. Quebral, and she gave me a call. Oh, Tony, okay na ba ito para sa'yo? So I suddenly, I'm sorry, I outranked many of you at that time, but here I was, a scholarship was made available to me, not intended for me, but anyway, a slot was made for me. And also I joined Glenn Pahe, who was already in Australia, Tere Velasco, and then me being sent to represent development communication, the other fields that were being developed at the time through a scholarship, fellowships from the Australia were computer science and mathematics. And there was a consortium, LaSalle, Ateneo, and UP. And that became my source of funds. But before we went to Australia, 3 Australian professors were sent to prepare us. In fact, at the time, the computer that was very new was, can you remember? You were with OU. What was happening in 1985? What was the computer at the time? You should know your technology history. Apple? Yes? What kind of Apple? In 1985. Macintosh. The Macintosh is a small Macintosh with that apple. The first time we saw the logo, the icon. Anyway, so they taught us how to use the Macintosh to use software that would do statistical analysis, factor analysis, principal components. Oh, these were all new to me. But here was Dr. Law, Henry Law, who was the one who came from the Department of Psychology, and he was the one who introduced me to George Kelly. Anyway, the one who invented personal construct theory. So I had a proposal. You cannot go for a PhD without anything in your mind. I mean, you don't go there for just to scout around what to do. You already have to have something. So I knew that I had to make sense of my experience during my time with Javier. I was interested in something like organizational communication. I took a course, of course, under Dr. Cuino. That was the first challenge to me. I could not keep up with my students when he was the teacher talking about new concepts from Michigan State. We know that he was fresh from the study of the Masagana 99. I can still remember that. And he applied these new theories about organizational communication to make sense of how the Masagana 99 made things happen. Anyway, Dr. Henry Law was a psychologist, and he listened to me present my proposal. The only trouble was he slept while I was presenting my proposal. So we were one-on-one. We already finished all the drills about the use of the computers. Okay, there were other 2 or 3 professors. One was Mary Sheehan, and she was a sociologist, medical sociologist, in fact. But she was more interested in how Filipinos heal using faith. So she was interested in the faith healers. I was surprised to find out when I went there that the husband was president of the Australian Hypnotic Society, Hypnosis Society. So what was a very interesting family. And the other one was Jeff MacDonald from Griffith University. He was the geographer in the group. So an extraordinary team to teach us methodology. So these were new methodologies to me that would prepare us for the social sciences. But the one thing that really attracted me were the ideas of Henry Law. He immediately suggested, once he heard my proposal, you look at, I could not even make sense of his pronunciation, you look at Frincella and Bannister and Frincella. But this is spelled this way. Baka nakama-cross ito ni Shell. Bannister and Frincella, that's how they pronounce it, but that's the spelling, Frincella. Bannister and Frincella. Very interesting followers of George Kelly. Okay, but let me leave this for a while. Anyway, another tragic comedy happened. Maybe not tragic comedy. A week or two after I arrived, he died of following a brain tumor. So the reason why he slept was not because my proposal was probably, that's my interpretation, but it made me feel happy that probably there was another explanation for his sleeping while listening to my thesis proposal. So that was but it hit me hard because I was interested in George Phillips. I was placed in a department of extension, agricultural extension. That was where Glenn Pahe and Terek Velasco already were. But this guy, Bruce, not Bruce Lee, Bruce Crouch was the name. He's a tough guy, bold and all, extension, he goes to the field. But he seemed not interested in me. It has been 2 weeks and I have not seen him. So I had a very strong self-concept after having served Dr. Rabier and knowing what was happening at that stage. I felt I was left alone, without any help. I had to do everything alone to start my studies. So I started to look around. I went to Mary Sheehan. I went to Geoff MacDonald, talked to them. I said, I'd rather be in sociology. So I said I'd rather try it than that. Anyway, I was interested in sociology, psychology, more than, I'm sorry to say, at the time I thought that agricultural extension was something I've heard so many times before. I was the campus reporter writing about new technologies, what's happening in our laboratories and so forth. I was interested in something else. Anyway, Mary Sheehan easily talked to the one in charge of the sociology program, and John Western, who was head of the Department of Sociology and Anthropology, really took me. And so I easily got into the sociology department. But I never left Kelly. I never left this psychological theory, and still was able to pursue it by using a keyword. I found that this term was something that was already in the literature. Psychology, psychosociology, or you can reverse it, like social psychology is what we were familiar with in Los Baños. Jimmy Valera was teaching it already, remember? In education, agriculture education. But psychosociology is, of course, a combination of psychology and sociology. So in other words, to cut it short, I was able to do what my interests was. This is a research PhD. I didn't have to attend courses, maybe 1 or 2. You don't have to credit them. I was free to do what I originally planned to do. So that was the beauty of it, and from then on, I went to social work, education, psychology also. I consulted people and put this thing together into my thesis proposal that eventually got finished in 1989. Anyway, so I'm interested in sociology. Basically, is interested in social, what we might call the social, our relations, and of course, psychology is interested in what's going on as mental processes. What kind of skills are necessary to do both psychology and sociology? I've been observing you, actually. Let me see if I can apply this. This is almost like a group, right? What is a group? We won't go to the technical thing. But what are those mental processes going on right now? Let me see if I can sort of make sense of you. The little time I had to observe you. Can I ask you all to participate? Stand. Come on. See the way you react to my encouragement? I can already tell. I can already sort you out into certain types. Okay, this is what I want you to do. So I can demonstrate to you how we can use personal construct theory. By the way, anybody knows anything already about? Of course, Shell, I don't have to ask. I'm sure she has written already, advised a lot of students on personal construct theory. Anybody else who could tell me more or less? Come on, just a few words. Maybe you remember, you have come across this in literature. George Kelly. Okay, nobody is courageous enough. You're shy, probably. You're not outgoing. No, you're still a learner. So all of these things are psychological terms I'm using now, right? I may be wrong, right? Okay, let's go to the point. The experiment is this. I will ask you to kiss the back of your elbows. Let's see. Oh, who has been successful? Let me see. In kissing the back of your elbows. Anybody? Please raise your hand. Anybody who succeeded? No one? That's creative. See? Anybody else? Oh, there you go. I saw something. Who? Oh, you kissed the back of the elbow of another person. Who did this thing? Who kissed the back of the elbow of another person? Nobody did. So there must be something about my son. By the way, that is Anthony James. He did it. Pero may daya kasi alam na niya yung aking trick, okay? So anyway, you may sit down now. What does this tell us? Can I tell whether, well, personal construct theory was originally conceived as a personality theory. Okay, so it is claimed within psychology as a theory of personality. But what is a person? What is personality? Okay, and what is our interest as communicators? Okay, those people who are in the field of communication studies. Of what interest is personality to us? Is that all personal construct theory is, or is it something else? All right, so that's why I have prepared this little outline. I sort of already talk about how I got into PCT. I'll talk to you about George Kelly. He started it all. I'll talk about the basics of theory. I'll try to make it as simple as possible. Kelly was a mathematician and a physicist before he became and then he became an educational sociologist before he became a clinical psychologist. So those are all different fields. And so the basics of the theory is very abstract. In fact, it can be converted into a mathematical statements, in algebraic statements, if you are interested in the mathematics of it. That's in fact what he did. And he developed a measurement instrument himself, a different kind of factor analysis at the time to be able to process the kind of data that is generated by his methods. So I'll talk about the methods, applications definitely that will be of interest to you, relevance to communication and information studies. And this is the new thing now. In fact, we have been discussing it within the hour about narrative science. This is what I think is the emergent field. It is a very new field where we can apply this. You hear a lot of people talking about stories that people tell is a fertile place to look into how people look at things, no? Our own history, for example. Narratives are very important media, no? For knowing about what happened and probably getting a glimpse of what is yet to happen, because we are the actors, we are the ones who are in the flow of history, for example. Psychology, the kind of psychology that personal construct theory is interpreted by others has been described as a psychology of worldviews. Okay? Worldviews, that means how you look at things. What is your framework, okay, in which you look at what's happening around you? How do you make sense of things? No? Are we free from this frame of mind at all? Can we be free of this? Can we be completely objective? Or is this far too much? Maybe we don't really have such a worldview. I remember one of the very interesting word that got me interested in DevCom was when Dr. Cabral mentioned the word Weltanschauung. You remember this? In his Weltanschauung, that's the German word for worldview. But if you read the seminal paper of Dr. Nora Cabral in development communication, you'll find this word used. Okay, so there was a philosophy behind development communication. There was something in the air when development communication cropped up, no? Or was conceived, constructed as an idea. Now, this is very different. When somebody describes psychology as a psychology of the future, you are going to raise a lot of eyebrows because some people have been enticed, for example, by a psychologist by the name of Sigmund Freud. Okay, who doesn't like sex? I mean, he said our behavior can be explained by sex, okay, by trauma, by the attractiveness of death itself. Thanatos is what he called it. The death instinct, or our basic instincts. It's rooted in our, you know about these 4 F's? The other psychologists just refer to the 4 F's. You know these 4 F's? What are the 4 F's? Well, I'll give you one. Let's see if you can guess the other 3. One is food. Because people's behavior is shaped by our need for food. What about the other? Give me another F that you may have encountered. So our behavior, the way we think, by friends. Okay, pero tama-tama sa Facebook, di ba? You're influenced by friends. Pero it's not quite in the psychologists' worldviews. I'm talking about worldviews. So when Maslow says, di ba? Our hierarchy of needs, and down there is if you cannot satisfy your need for food, then you cannot go higher, di ba? You cannot you will not be motivated by anything higher in the hierarchy. Yeah, di ba? You remember this? So food. So what else are there? What attracts us? What makes us, you know lang sa Facebook, dislike and dislike. Why do we like and dislike things? Anyway, the other 2 F's there is flight. What's that one? Sinerch na siya. Oh, mayroon ng ano. Okay, you're resourceful. So flight, what's the, if you have flight, okay, well, it's the same thing. You fly, you flee, diba? Some things you avoid, and some things you embrace, you like. What is that? Fight or flight? You fight, okay? If you are courageous enough, you don't run away, you fight. So the 4th F, of course, everybody knows this, right? You make love, right? Sex, so sex is the 4th F. Hindi na gets ng iba. Now I know who is sleeping. Oh, huh? Sandy will write you. Anyway, so we know psychologists use these acronyms, okay, to show you what are class of things that describe what psychology can do for you. Pero helpful ba yan? Okay, you are able to type, some of us as courageous, some of us as shy, some of us as, very base ang ating like for example, because we are so poor in this country, there's nothing else. We cannot think well politically, di ba? We make wrong choices because basically our need is food. If we cannot provide food, we will never change the way we select our candidates. Oh, di ba? May connection. Oh. Anyway, the other way of simplifying this is what is called the Big Five. Anybody heard the Big Five in psychology? It goes by an acronym OCEAN. Okay? What is OCEAN? I'll give you one. Let's see if you can guess the other four. O stands for openness. Okay, openness. Who would say, I'm not open to anything, I'm closed-minded. But see, that is very useful, di ba? Do you agree that some of us can be described as open-minded, more or less? Maybe some of us are in the middle. Some of us are open-minded. What do you think is C? Anybody? Di ba pag mag-apply ka ng job, sabi, ano ba to? Nalagay dyan, wanted. A person with blank personality. What is that word? A person with blank personality. So suppose you are being hired as a flight attendant. So what kind of personality would you look for? Huh? A pleasing. Or what is the pleasing here? What is the word? Huh? Charming? Okay. It doesn't sound like a technical term. It's like a Facebook term. That is this one, which means agreeableness. Okay, so your one is openness. What do you think is C? O, E na lang. E is the most popular actually. That is extroversion. So, extrovert ka ba? Introvert? O, who are admittedly extrovert here? Who would admit? I'm an extrovert. Wala, talaga mag-reveal ng personality nila. Who is an introvert? Mayroon nagsabi, introvert. Courageous, you can do, di ba? Somebody will say, ano siya, introvert pero courageous. Kasi nagtaas yun ng kamay, ikaw. Ano ka? Introvert ka rin. Wow, introvert. All right. So everybody else is extrovert. I have yet to see. Are you demonstrating that kind of behavior? So quiet. Well, what do you think is C? Conscientiousness. So, nakita na niya, conscientious. Sino ang, who lacks consciousness here? No one would admit, right? Because, sabihin natin, pag UP, conscientious. Is that true? Does that run true for all? What is N? Actually, I've observed this from you. But I'm not going to say who I observe to be this N. What is N? It is neuroticism. So some of us are more neurotic than others. Kaya may nagsabi, all of us are neurotic. We just differ in terms of degree. You agree? Tatawa-tawa kayo. So those who are smiling, probably, di ba? It sounds true for them. And some of you who just, yung mga poker face, they're hiding something probably. Ayaw ka lang nag-smile. See, you can catch them, di ba? With their belief of themselves. Actually, this is more than what psychologists technically call personality. They reveal our concepts of ourselves. Anyway, so the other way in which personal construct theory has been described is that it is a psychology of you and me. What does that mean? It means that when you read it and you try to understand what it means, you come to a realization that, yes, it talks about me, talks about him, talks about you. And like, for example, Freud. Can you imagine Freud? Would you like to have an example of Freud? Let's see, how would Freud do his kind of psychology? He'd probably make you lie down on this couch, look at the ceiling, make you relax, right? You've seen this in the movies. And then he will ask you questions about something that's related to a traumatic experience, right? What gives you pleasure? What gives you pain? What happened in your past? Because theoretically, you can predict your present behavior. You can explain it based on your childhood. But all of this can be challenged, okay, by other perspectives in psychology. And how effective is this? How long do you have to lie on the couch to change your behavior and find something good happening to you? How many of this can you do? How many people can you listen to expressing themselves on the couch? It's not a very economical way of doing psychology. If you want to change people, you cannot do it one at a time, right? Sabi nila, yan daw ang difference between psychology and sociology. Okay? Sociology, if you're a sociologist, you condemn people all at the same time. Diba? Oh, sabi na, we can change the society. Let's just shoot everybody above 50 or maybe above 40. Make it better, diba? No, definitely will change society with a very young population with more open minds, right? No, not necessarily. You believe that? But psychologists, the only thing they promise is that they will change you one at a time. But George Kelly, because of his theory, more or less was saying, because we know that it's the everyday thing that we do, that we can understand through that psychology, there's probably a more economical way of doing it. You listen to a few words, to a few minutes of interaction, and you can already sense something that you can work on in this person. Okay, would you like to demonstrate? A demonstration, may I call at least 6 volunteers? See, I can tell your personality by the way you either avoid volunteer work or not. I thought UP students are, they volunteer whenever there's a call for, I'm saying, your smile. Okay, 1, can you come up here? The 6. Okay. So, we don't, okay, volunteer done. So there's another structure. There's a social structure, somebody ordering you. It's a different social psychology. Okay, come up so we can do this in a hurry. Okay, so we don't necessarily have to follow the outline. No? We're actually doing already the methodology, right? This is already methodology, but we'll do it backwards and I'll explain to you the theory behind it afterwards. O doon kayo para kitang-kita yung 6. Okay? So I'll talk about George Kelly later. In fact, I'll talk about the repertory grid at this point. Okay? Yun. Kala ko kulang. Kala ko 5.5. Sila. Okay? Are you seeing 6 people here? Are you sure? Baka meron pang kulang. Tingnan natin. Yun. Kitang-kita sila. Now I will ask for another volunteer. The one whose constructs will examine. Who is this brave guy? Volunteer. Volunteer na lang. Huh? Anybody? Somebody will stand here and look at these 6 people. All right? Okay, good. What's your name? What's your name? Huh? Jessica. Okay, everybody, name. Give us names. You know them, all of them? Not everyone. Yung pakilala kayo. Name lang, Name lang. Don't reveal too much behavior because that will destroy the experiment. Name lang, straight away. Lakasan mo para madinig na. Carla? Oh, do you remember all the names? Okay, good. Now, let me ask you this question. Okay? Can you just randomize yourself? Randomize the methodology, the items in the test. All right, now you have randomized yourself. So we'll look at the first three. Okay, look at the first three there. Let me answer this question. In what way are any two of them similar and different from the other one? In what way are any two of them similar and different from the other one? Oh, you mentioned their name. You mentioned their name. Mention the name of the two who are similar or different. Remember, it's the question.
First is the way they carry their hair.
Oh, okay. You
Hairstyle. So Pat and Dana have long hair.
Dana?
Untied hair. Pat and
Okay,
Dana.
Put yourselves near each other. You are separated.
Dara pala, sorry.
Okay, that you
Dara.
are together because they are similar. They are different. Okay, what else? You answer the same question again. What way are any two of them similar or different from the other one?
Another one. Another set of
No, the same question but the same set. The three people there.
Okay. Tapos yung different is the way they wear their shirt. So Pat and Gian naman.
Okay, so you stay together, the ones that are similar, different. Okay, so now, another
More?
same question, yes.
Dara and Gian, they both wear pants.
Okay.
Okay. Then the difference,
Do you know them, by the way, in some
just,
ways?
I didn't know Pat po. Pero the
There's
rest
one
kilala
person
ko
that
po.
you don't know. Okay, let's change it a little bit because, well, there's a result there that I can tell you about, but I don't want to embarrass you at this point. You get a hint. Who are the more familiar persons to you among them? Familiar enough to be able to say something more than, well, you know. something more.
Carla and Seth.
Oh, who else is the third one?
And Ephraim.
Okay, so pwede na yun. Salamat kaayo. Bisaya yun, ano? Natuto na ako ng Bisaya. Oh, salamat kaayo sa tulo na natawo. Natatawa si Anthony because mas magaling siya sa Bisaya. O, sila na lang natira. Hindi, teka, may tatanong pa tayo. Sa paanong paraan? Magkamukha ang dalawa at hindi magkamukha para mo pag tinagalog mo iba na ang meaning, ano? Hindi magkamukha, similar pero similar. Oh, in what way are any two similar and different from the third one or the one set apart?
Walang specific category po no anything na consider ko. Sige po. Carla and Seth, pares silang babae.
Okay.
And then si Ephraim, yung hindi babae, so lalaki.
Do you agree?
I don't know. Oh my gosh.
You don't know?
I mean, no, I don't know what category am I should differentiate or similarize these people. Ayun po.
Another one.
Same question with
Same question.
Ephraim and Seth. I mean, physically, they have short hair, hairstyle.
Okay, let me lead you now because
Okay.
what have you noticed about the constructs? About the
The physical.
Physical,
Yes,
okay?
yeah.
So a person sometimes insists the physical thing most of the time. Okay. So nandun na tayo kasi now we see the pattern. But now, let me lead you into saying, can you say something more that are not physical? Oh. May leading na yun, di ba?
Okay.
I changed the theory a bit, but that's okay.
Sige, based on my relationship with these people,
Wow, that's the interesting.
I just know that Carla and Seth are both introvert. They don't talk too much with people. Like they just
Do you agree?
no. I mean, in
sige.
a group setup, sila yung tatahimik lang or would just sit in the corner. But Ephraim,
Yes.
he's an extrovert and he would love to speak to anyone with any topic.
But those things are words that you get already from
Oh,
the
yeah.
tribe, right? Is there any other way of describing them? Again, you can ask the same question. In what way are any two of them similar and or different, and similar or different in the from the third one?
I think, oh my gosh.
Oh.
I think
Alright.
Carla and, oh my gosh, pag na nga. I mean, in terms of being emotional or not,
Okay.
I mean, the one who will easily cry like that.
Okay.
Yun.
And?
Sorry, friends.
And
And the one, parang in terms of, ano ba, saying basta ganun, yung iyakin or yung parang one who would show emotions or one who would have poker face, ganun. So, should I tell them kung sino yun? Hindi, okay na po yun.
They don't want more here. So, if people are not, how do you describe? You are separating the two from, as different from, what's your name? Ephraim. So, how do you describe Ephraim then?
Ano ba? Hindi.
No, from the listeners.
Kung emotional po or not?
No, because you described
yeah.
it was emotional. But how different is from the two?
I don't know. May dalaw case. Hirap.
Anyway, it's okay. Now I have demonstrated. It's okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
You don't have to finish it.
Yeah.
I know
Thank
that
you.
difficulty. But you can sense right here, right, that there's a personal, diba? You cannot describe this by words. Some of them are, in fact, indescribable. There are feelings that are there, maybe not there, but that is personal to her. Okay, who are we understanding here? Not them, because they may disagree. They have what we deal with here, reality in quotes, is not a reality about the people you talk about. What is more real, in some sense, is her descriptions. Her undescribable, unworded, differentiation. See? Remember differentiation. The only way these descriptions arose was when the question was asked. And was when a contingent, in other words, the accidental set of people who stood up and volunteered for this experiment. So as you can see, if you are looking at it from a empirical perspective, you would imagine that there is a lot of accidental thing. In our everyday life, we encounter people. You're not looking at a set of things that can give us some form of exact knowledge. Because they just happen to volunteer. So something you describe is something that arose out of the situation, right? And you happen to be asked to think about it. But I now know something about you. First, at the instance you started, of course, it may be an artifact of the experiment itself, being just the demonstrative, that you are describing more of the physical thing. But that is revealing of you. Because that's one of the diagnostic constructs that Kelly used. He called that diagnostic construct physicalistic. So can you imagine people who only sees the physical things in people? Would you like to go out in a date with somebody like that? Only wants to see the physical in you? Diba? Sometimes it's exciting. You are attracted by the physical things. So what is it? If it's not physical, people concentrate on something else. They prefer something else. What is that? Most of the time, the contrast that Kelly found were psychological. So psychological is a broad term for things that people refer to that has nothing to do with the physical aspects of things, but things that are revealing of ourselves. I think almost everything else is revealing of our psychology. If it is not, of course, our choice of clothes is also revealing of our psychology. But more than that, our emotions, since you are referring to emotions, our intense emotions can be revealed, di ba? By the kinds of way we differentiate things. Okay? So the very basic, in fact, if you go back to your information theory, remember information, how is information defined? It's a difference in matter energy. It's a physical thing or an energetic thing that is the start of our communication. Information is information because we are able to see differences. And so a construct, as Kelly would call it, which is a dichotomous one, always there is a contrast. We are all able to discern, okay, a contrast in the way we look at objects, things, people, processes around us, events. And those are the very basic foundations of our views, our worldviews, okay? The way we predict the future. Right? So there are other techniques there. For example, self-characterization. You are just asked to describe yourself. But there's a technique that Kelly invented, which is to ask, for example, for you to imagine someone who is very familiar with you. Okay, so look at things from the perspective of someone who knows you very well. And now you tell me, from that perspective, how would that person describe you? So you start with a sentence. So if you're a female, she, so that you speak something about yourself, she is, blah, blah, blah. Okay, or he is, blah, blah, blah. And then you continue. He will listen to you from the third person perspective. So there's a way, there's a reason for that, in some sense, in the way you dissociate yourself from who you are describing. You don't say I, because sometimes that perspective pins us down to a particular perspective. But once you see, para ka nang lumabas sa sarili mo, di ba? Para ka nang yung espiritu na tinitingnan ka sa ibang anggulo. O na nakikita mo si Antonio, ay ayoko na, baka mahuli ko ng aking mga nakakilala sa akin. So, see, there's a way of distancing yourself from, maybe some of us have a tendency to protect, di ba? Ourselves, our ego, our self-impressions of ourselves. We have belief in ourselves. We have knowledge in ourselves. And it's very disturbing, you see, to see yourself any other way. So you would, as much as possible, try to be consistent with your idea of yourself. So he has been able to make people relax and see themselves outside themselves and describe that. To Kelly, that is a very more useful way of understanding another person. Fixed role therapy, in other words, once you are able to generate all of this, or emotional, or let's just say, ano nga sabi niya kanina? What was it starting to say about Ephraim? So some people for you are emotional, some are, anyway, some are physical, let's say, even if you prefer, let's say, you prepare jeans, or you prepare, ano ba mga contrast sa jeans? Slacks. Di ba pareho lang yan? Iba. Okay. Okay. Smart. Let's say, smart. Dito naman, huwag naman tayo sabi mo, not so smart. Okay. So, yan, the way you describe. Yung fixed role therapy ni once ito nang galing sa inyo. Okay? Nakuha halimbawa sa tao na is describing, making this differentiation. Fixed role therapy is he will make you play the role of the person that is something that you like. For example, what is your ideal self? It reveals that oh, I'm like this, I'm like that, but I wanted to be this. Can we try that? So we will say, can you try this for the next 2 weeks? Now you're saying you're emotional, but you will try to be, let's say, just calm, or a calm person. Okay, I will try jeans. I've been wearing slacks. And I will try to be not so smart. Anyway, I know I'm smart, but this time I'll try to be not so smart. So you just want to know if I can experiment with my change. So very simple. All you have to do is just line them all up. Okay, this is what I am now. This is what I am now. That is what I am now. So I will play the role, the person who is calm, wears jeans, not so smart. So I will not be. See, I can play that, right? If I were not so, like now, for example, I see myself as a good lecturer. I'd like to wear this, so I will appear. It will help in my image. I will speak loud. I will be careful with my accent, the way I pronounce things. So this all goes, diba, with my image. But I can try to fool you and makes mistakes here and there. And then I will deliver a coup de grace by demonstrating I'm not so dumb after all, right? Then you will see the genius in me. Yun ang drama. Kelly's work really works in a dramatic sense. In fact, when he was working as a chair of the Department of Clinical Psychology in Ohio State University, he did not like what was going on in the department. The department was in a mess. It was like a department with run by a headless chicken. I'm exaggerating this. So what he did was, he changed his clothes. Okay, siyempre, naka-Amerikana, di ba? Andiyan, kita nyo. So he put up a farmer's slack. Okay, yung overall. So he dressed like a farmer and went to his department. Imagine your department. And he behaved like he was cleaning up the department. All right, we are starting to run things in a new way. Okay, we'll get rid of all the cobwebs in this department. Pero metaphoric yun. Cobwebs, pinasa siguro yung mga hindi na nagpe-perform dyan. We'll have to do something about it. So he wanted to change things. Like he had this drama. Actually, Kelly's teacher was wife was a teacher of Shakespeare. So he knows Shakespeare, as you know, has been described as probably one of the great psychologists. Not a psychologist in the technical sense, but if you read his production, okay, you can imagine the description of the intense emotions that we have experienced, no matter what culture you are. And this is what Kelly got from the wife, the drama. Okay, so he put that in his theory. And his father was a ship captain. He was a minister of the church. So what does that mean? And he grew up at the time of he was already a thinker at the time, but what preceded, decades before him, was the Great Depression in America. Okay, so they went through the Great Depression. And many of the readings he had in psychology, it seemed like to him, they were of no use to him. How can you explain people's behavior who had to line up for food, dole out, and they went bankrupt, desolate because of the fields were not productive. And then it was leading to the war era and so forth. So Freud's theory could not explain. How can you use Freud to explain what was happening? Because we have the death instinct, we like sex, and that cannot help you get out of your depression. O hindi ba yun ang gusto natin sa DevCom, to help people get out of poverty? The same thing, right? America also experienced that in the early 1900s. But we had the psychology, which was very popular, from Austria. And then it went to the States. In fact, there's a very good movie you can watch on YouTube, Century of the Self, describing how Freud's ideas were distorted by the Americans. Freud wanted control, you see, because he was observing his daughter and people who were affected by their traumatic experiences. So one of these terms, of course, was his genius to be able to say, come up with the concept of the unconscious. Is it the unconscious that making us do things that sometimes we are unwittingly doing and then we don't want to do it? Repression, for example, is another one. Sublimation, if you have heard of these terms. Many of these things came from him. Sublimation, in other words, there's something almost like evil in you. You're capable of doing something very harmful to others, but then you become a painter, a very good academician. So this is a way of suppressing what is welling up in you. So you're sublimating something that is harmful into something that is productive. A piece of art, a book. But it came from Freud. But those were very limited observations. But they became food for the thought. They became challenges to future psychologists. But Kelly was a product of the times when people tried to follow the ways of the mathematicians, those who have achieved very well in the other sciences. In other words, he wanted a more scientific kind of psychology. Unlike Freud, which was full of Greek mythology, Shakespearean language, and a product of his very personal observations of the limited people that came to him, right? Clinical psychology is like that. You cannot call a standard sample of so much people to be able to make some generalizations. You don't do that in clinical psychology. What you have are documentations of interactions with people. So Kelly formulated with just one statement what he called fundamental postulate. And everything else that is derived from the theory, the so-called 11 corollaries, became the basis for his description of what a person is. So he says, for example, in his fundamental postulate, that a person's processes are psychologically channelized by the way they anticipate. Very important, each word here, events. Okay? Persons' processes are psychologically channelized by the way they anticipate events. So who is a person? What are we referring to in a person? Is it the whole of him, including the biology of him? Is it the self? Is it the mind? Does it include the brain? Does it include the neurons? Okay. At the time that Kelly was trying to build the psychology, it was a very different one. You have to change your words because there are terms that he used. They are quite popular terms, but there are terms that he used in a technical term. Like, for example, well, in fact, he said, maybe we can get rid of some of the terms we use in psychology, like learning. Can you imagine psychology without the term learning? He said, you don't need the word learning because everybody learns. We don't need motivation. Okay, we don't need the concept of need, which were all used by Freud. Maslow, as we know. Sabi niya, man, sorry na ng mga women, Man is a form of motion. A form of motion. Ibig sabihin, gumagalaw talaga tayo, di ba? Tayo ay galaw. So bakit mo pa sasabihin na, why do you have to explain that person did this or did that? Talagang gagawa, di ba? Whatever it is, we will change, we will move. We are already a form of motion. So, in other words, if you associate learning, you were this way and then you became this way and try to call that learning, okay, now you are able to answer 50 questions more than what you had before. So there's a change, there's learning. And that is what you call learning. Sa kanya, we don't need that word learning. It's that the fact that there will really be change. You test again and again, there will be change. Okay? Very simple, sometimes very hard to follow. What about the concept of need? In other words, a concept of need means that, di ba? I need this, so I will be attracted by this. In other words, we are motivated by this. Or you can be driven, you can be kicked or pushed by something. So there's a driver, there's a pusher. So you're trying to explain that motion with these concepts which are mechanical, which are not, which cannot be described scientifically. In other words, he's saying also that motivation is useless if you come to think about it. Because whether you like it or not, people will change. You don't even have to look beyond. In other words, kasi outside yun di ba? When you say, oh, are you motivated by this? Are you attracted? Are you pulled by this? Are you pulled by... That was outside individual. Sa kanya, just look at the mental processes, find the patterns there. If you have the instrument to do it, and you will be able to make sense of this person in a psychological way. Can you follow that difference? So person's processes, what are my processes? I have my biological processes. You digest your food. Pwede bang psychological din yun? Na-channelize then? What do you think? In other words, channelize because you can either go this way or that way or ignore it. There are ways, and you can find it working like in a regular pattern. For example, food. Or you digest it. That's a biological process. Can that be psychologically explained? Sometimes it makes you feel bad. Makes you feel good. Is that psychological or just physiological thing that's happening to you? So you can think about it that way. So in other words, there are channels. There are repeated ways in which we do things. Okay? But how that is patterned in a repeatable way is because we are anticipating something. In other words, it's a new term. We are not motivated. We are not pushed. But there's something we are trying to do. Okay? What we are trying to do. We all try to do something all the time. Meron ba? Can you think of a way where you're not trying to do anything? Even if you just sit there, you're not trying to do anything? Of course, you're trying to keep yourself propped up. All right? Don't you think you have some help there trying to sit upright? So in other words, to him, anticipation is the key concept. We are not, of course, the same thing as saying we are active, we are not passive organisms, okay? Because we are doers, we do things, okay, with something in mind. Okay, why do we need to be, why does our behavior, the way we think, our emotions have to be explained by something outside ourselves? Of course, we cannot be a nomad, di ba? A person without an island. Okay, we cannot be. Ito yung pinag-usapan natin kanina. We are always relational, we are ecological, we exist in a place and time and so forth. We have a history. We cannot be free of this. In other words, how can you say things can be explained just within the person's processes? Kelly was trying to develop a pure psychology without the influence of other things that can be very well explained by group processes and so forth. He called it pure psychology. So he left out, sabi niya, society can wait. All right? Sometimes he speaks metaphorically this way. Society can wait. In other words, leave out the social explanations. Okay, the effect of structure, the effect of hierarchy, the effect of at this time, at some point. Although, so what are those 11 corollaries? I will just give you examples, okay, so in visual forms, because I know that these things can be very abstract. Because I'm going to switch to my Facebook page. I wrote something like, who's behind, that's my mother, my tatay, when they celebrated their wedding anniversary. And I said, remembering her on the day of my special martyr. Who is behind my mother? My mother's there. Can you figure out? You see? No, you don't know her anymore, but maybe Sandy Floor or Sel can recognize. That's Dr. Nora Cabral. Just to show you some relations. My mother was a contemporary of Dr. Cabral in high school. Si Dr. Cabral led a small group of valedictorians. Okay, they had a Turon Club. They call it Turon Club in Torres High School in Tondo, Manila. My mother was not valedictorian, but she was invited into the group. So after class, they meet in the Solis Street. They eat turon. All right. Anyway, I wanted to proceed I have a lot of. Let me just jump into. Sorry, I have to scroll like this, but you can see, you can have a taste of how productive I am as a Facebook user. In fact, I'm developing this intentionally. I have my corpus of my constructs. Okay, in fact, I'm trying to analyze my construing processes. Okay, what sort of patterns I could find in terms of the time of the day, what sort of issues interest me. Oops, I even have begun there. Now, those are recent graduates, kind of food we eat. We do that all the time, right? Nagutom na kayo. Yan. Oh, yan yung ano, di ba? So, cum laude din ng DevCom. But we'll find that, don't worry. That's kebab from Davao City. That's a toilet. Sorry. In a restaurant. That's me. My breakfast. That's where, I'm sure somebody will remember this. Does this remind anybody? This one? No? Let me see if somebody will recall something. That's our house. We lived together. When he was chancellor, he invited me in, so we shared rooms. Also, before me was Dong Rasco, Nelson Natural. So this is your house, still standing there. They are going to refurbish it. There, that's his bedroom when he was first chancellor of UP Mindanao. Anyway, interesting. In other words, I can make sense of this and using personal construct theory. What meanings do those pictures have for me? See, you can extract those things based on construct theory. Photographs are very good stimuli for remembering experience. Oh, bongo. Oops, that's me. This is one very memorable thing. This happened during the first day of President Duterte. No, he was not yet proclaimed as president. He was president presumptive, and he went to Davao City. We were just a few hours there after he came, and we have these books. We presented this to him. You know these books? Do you recognize any of these books? Crisis and Resistance, Strength and Struggle. Those were books from Joma season, Jose Maria season. Our department chair told me instructed me to go to Duterte and give books from Jose Maria season because, I don't want to fill in the narrative, but there I was following the orders of my department chair, and we were all smiling. Okay, I don't want to just to say that one of these is a mathematician, and the other one was a former NPA commander. That's not me. Okay, now you can conclude which one it is. Who do you think? That's the one who fought Marcos. You can easily sense, of course. Who is behind the mirror? I was asking, behind the glass door. Okay, I want to deal because that is dangerous. Anyway, we had the chance to observe what was happening. We were trying to in a sense, get President Duterte to know them, and maybe they were jockeying for positions. A very interesting time at that time. Oops, this is very important. In other words, can constructs be there at this age? What is the meaning? Who has seen this experiment where a child is made to crawl? Okay, and this is called the visual clip experiment. There's a glass there in the front. Can the child sense that there's danger in crossing the cliff? Visually, you see that you might fall, but when you touch it, you get the contradicting information that's probably solid. They can go around, to the other side. So any behavior that is demonstrated by the child can be revealing of the kinds of construct I'm saying. Is there already an idea of safe, not safe? Is there an idea of I will fall, I will not fall? See, those are contrasting things, and they are called constructs. So very interesting in terms of how constructs are formed. This is the, if you're familiar with some of the theorists in personality, you have Freud, Erikson, Murray, Skinner, Alport, Kelly, Maslow, Rogers. So what are these? These are constructs, but these are technical. In other words, does the psychology assume that people are free or people are determined? In other words, determined na tayo ng ating childhood, determined tayo ng ating physicality, no? Or are we free to change ourselves? Essentially, people differ. Kelly is more or less at in the middle, and you can say that Freud is for Freud. Basically, people are very determined. Okay, determined. Kasi yon scale is 1 to 11, di ba? So yung dapat dito talaga yung 11 side of determinism. So this scale is saying that Freud sees people as determined, while Kelly sees it somewhere in between. Rogers, if you can remember Carl Rogers, he sees essentially people as very free, okay? And so with Maslow, so ayan, you can compare psychologists that way. Are people rational or irrational? So people again differ. To Kelly, it seems that people are very rational. Our people, in a sense, can be explained by the something outside themselves. Okay, that's why you call some approach as holistic, others as elemental. In other words, you have to look at the elements that tend to influence the behavior of people. And so, if you look at Kelly, he's somewhat more lean towards an explanation that's holistic. Okay, holistic. Pero parang very personal, no? But actually, if you look at the questions that Kelly asks, yung original, hindi naman itong mga tao, you don't take them at random. The repertory grid actually is a set of what he called elements. So these are roles in your life. Like, for example, you are asked to think about your father, mother, let's say a sister, or a brother, all right? Of course, some of us may not have this, but so you can think of somebody who played that kind of role. No? You can have a person who you like or dislike. You can have someone in authority, no? Like a priest. Or you have someone intimate, like yung unang ginamit niya, no? Old flame. What's an old flame? What's an old flame? Huh? That's an old flame. Tatawa-tawa si Lex, so marami siyang old flames. Siyempre, yun yung nagpa-apoy sa inyong mga damdamin, di ba? Oh, yun, flame eh. So you are asked to think about them. Nice, di ba? Kasi maalala mo sila. Kung ano nagpainit sa iyong mga laman. And so forth. But anyway, may reason dito. No? Why, for example, someone who is very unhappy, someone who is very unhappy are made to think about that and so forth. Anyway, mayroong reason why the choice. Okay, the reason is Kelly wants you to think people who have some form of authority, simple people who are connected with your experience of intimacy. And then what he called valences, it's like from chemistry, but what actually he meant was parang Facebook. There are things that we dislike, and there were things that we like. So, essentially, yan yung mga choice niya, people you will think about. They are already selected for some reason, people who fill up certain roles. Of course, you have your own father, your own mother, right? So personal, because sarili mong mother, father yon. You don't think about an abstract father or mother. So you're asked to think about your own mother and father. And then, of course, if you have intimacies, like an old flame, or old former girlfriend, former boyfriend, you're asked to think about them. Someone in authority, like a priest, no, or a teacher. Okay, so you put them there. So these are the people that are normally would have significant role to play in anyone's life. Of course, things may have changed. Now, may mga single families, di ba? Single parents, and so forth. It is not as structured as this. Pwede mo nang baguhin, di ba? Whoever has influenced your life. So, para kay Kelly, if you capture this, people in this set, you would have an idea of who this person is. And you have something to start with. You can begin to interact with this person because you know already so much about this person. That was the purpose of the repertory grid. To start an interaction with a person you do not know. Okay, so the first step is to find out ano yung ginagamit niya sa pagtingin niya sa sarili niya. Okay, yun ang importante. You don't go look at a textbook and say, like if you are a psychiatrist, di ba, may manual yan eh. So you look for the symptoms. Diba? The diagnostic, this is known as the DSM, Diagnostic Statistical Manual. So there is already a description there of who is suffering from bipolar, diba? Disorder, who is suffering from schizophrenia, who is depressed, for example, manic depressive, and so forth. Describe na yan dyan eh. All you have to do is look at the book. If you know how to look at the symptoms, you can diagnose. You can type people, and then you have interventions. You know what medicine to use, diba? And so forth. What sort of... can you imagine Duterte, for example, saying, kasabu ka na. Wala, sira na yan. Buhay niyan. Wala ka na magawa. Tapos na, diba? You cannot do anything much anymore with it. Buti pa yung marijuana or yung cocaine, di ba? Doesn't damage your brain that much. Sasabihin niya. Hindi naman ganun ang pagkasabi, di ba? Parang sinabi, pag shabu, tapos ka na, wala ka na. There's nothing that can be done with you. Sira na yung brain. Di ba? No intervention. No. Di ba ganyan ang mga narinig natin? Imagine that is the kind of thing that will rule our intervention in our problem with legal substance abuse. In other words, sinabing wala ng pag-asa, what's the use of trying to listen to the story of why they became this way? Wala na, there's nothing you can do. But Kelly, you see, if you have something like that, if you only try, there must be something there that you can start with. Di ba? Oh, yun yung kanyang approach, which is very radical in that sense because seems like there's a way of... so I won't go through this. This is very technical. You need to enroll in my class to be able to go through all of this. So what are those 11 corollaries? I will show some pictures. Oh yeah, okay, this one. We change ways. That's one of the corollaries. And the title of that is modulation. Parang sa, music. It has to do with how we change. Okay, we change our ways, for example. And a very good example of this is a person who commits suicide. Oh. So what can we say about the way the person constructs the world that he is dealing with when a person is... why is the person unable to think any other way except to end the life? There must be already a construction there of something, a conclusion already made. Kelly actually started with the metaphor. So for him, the person is like a scientist. So every one of us is like a scientist. What do scientists do? Okay. Scientists, what do scientists do? Discover, what else? How can you describe the work of a scientist? Make sense of the word, research. Now, are you doing thesis already? Thesis? Not yet? You already have thought about the research problem? Essentially, what is it that you... Okay, is this thing familiar with you? When you have an X and a Y. Or what is an X and a Y? What is that a symbol of? Huh? Unknown? Which is the unknown? Variables? Well, the scientific work essentially is trying to connect X and Y. X being a cause and Y being an effect. That's the simple way of doing it. So in fact, Kelly is saying that persons do that all the time. We try to establish links between something that will help explain things. This happened to us. What must have happened before? It must have been the cause. But we are naive scientists. Okay, you see me wearing my glasses with a, what do you say about me? Okay, so you make conclusions like probably he's really smart because he probably ruined his eyes reading a lot of books. But that is only a hypothesis that has yet to be proved. That's something you just entered your mind. It's not a rigorous, okay, hypothesis. But we do that all the time. All right, we make conclusions based on a few observations, and we try to establish the connections. But how do we change? Okay, so if you think of somebody who is going to commit a suicide, if you think in these terms, what are those things that this person have connected in this way? Or probably has already made the conclusion because I have been through this one. There's no other way, but this one is the best way to deal with this problem. And the why is to kill yourself, find a way of killing yourself. It's a hypothesis, it's a conjecture, it's a theory that we have of ourselves, that our behavior will be shaped that way. So for Kelly, if you think about that there's a pattern of a cause-effect relationship there, the challenge for the psychologist is to find out the theory that is behind this person's actions. If we know enough about the theory or that worldview, then we will be able to explain why the person committed an act like that, ending your life in fact. Diba? We change our view of things when we acquire new experience. Very simple, diba? We change. What do you see here? Huh? A lizard. You see, what is also a lizard here? Okay. Before, what did you think it was? Just maybe a trunk of a tree. But once you see the lizard, your perception begins to change, and probably some emotions come to you. Like you approach this place, I probably might get a bite or something. So it depends sa experience, depende sa nakikita mo, di ba? We change our behavior, our emotions. So ito, parang sinasabi ko lang, you can always find another way of looking at things if you are creative enough. There was a philosophy that behind this Kelly's theory. He called it constructive. That's the technical term for saying that if we are creative enough okay? We can always find a different way of explaining things. And he called that, by this hard term, called constructive alternativism. All it takes is a little creativity to see things some other way. If you are creative enough, you can always find a different way of explaining things. You can construct things in a new way. There's an alternative way of looking at things. But that is a philosophy. That is what guided him in formulating this theory. In other words, we're not stuck with, sometimes we are stuck with our definition of what we assume to be a reality. Okay. Now here, after having gone through the repertory grid and other methodologies, one can see patterns, no? Because some of the patterns that people have discovered, clinical psychologists have discovered who used personal construct theory, some have our constructs grouped together, our ideas grouped together. Some have very few ideas, maybe some of them center around religion, okay? Some of them center around academic life, and some of them center around friends, no? And so forth. They cluster together, and you can find patterns. So I said this is the mathematical application of his measurement tools, and he is able to discover these patterns. If you take up your statistics in your later courses, you will begin to understand that there is such a thing as multivariate analysis. We have factor analysis, principal components analysis. They group our ideas. But people who go through this, some would have more than 3. Now, what do you think about people with more clusters than people with less clusters of ideas that they are interested in? Suppose you are someone who are interested almost in anything at all that comes around. You want to know about this, you want to acquire something like this, you want to acquire a new gadget. What does it speak about you? That kind of behavior where you know a lot about things versus someone who knows only a few things. What do you think? What's the difference, do you think, with people like that? We're very consolidated knowledge of only a few things. Well, you can say some people are more simple-minded because there are only a few things they're concerned about. They know a lot about religion, about friends, about academics, but they're just you can cluster them. Versus someone who knows almost everything, a little of this, a little of that. What do you think? Well, what kind of behavior can you expect from people like that? Who would you rather deal with? Somebody with, is this necessarily simple-minded? Or maybe someone who is more sure of himself? Focus. There's focus. And they're probably able to cope with life better because there's just so little things to deal about. And they're probably all related. My academics, not necessarily inconsistent with my beliefs. My friends, we share the same religion and so forth. So this person is probably more integrated, more sure of himself. Right? And it's simple, but it's a non-complicated life. But someone who likes here and there and then forgets this, jumps to another one, knows a lot of things. Ang description in the first person there, I mentioned, an author, Dan Bannister, found out that the schizophrenics are like tables of random numbers. They know about so many things, they're concerned with, worried about so many things, that their thoughts are disordered. In fact, he called it a thought disorder. There are some schizophrenic diagnoses that does not require medical intervention. To him, because it's a thought disorder, you have to learn to deal with your experience by changing the way you think, the way you construe things. So some of us may appear to be so smart because we know a lot of things, but we're probably the most confused people on earth, persons on earth. We have a hard time choosing between ito nga ba o ito nga ba? Because there are so many choices. There are so many ways in which we we cannot even make decisions. It takes a lot of time to make decisions. Because there are so many options that we see. Buti pa ito, hindi ba? Hindi ka mahirapan dahil organized na sa mind yun. On the other hand, this could be a sign of closed-mindedness. You're not open to new experience because they cannot accommodate anything new. Yung isa, you accommodate anything new, but you cannot do anything because everything is new. Di ba? So yun, that's one of the corollaries of the theory is that we have a way of dividing up things. No? Some divide the world too much. Let's see if we can draw some of your constructs. So the question is, what was the first thing you saw here? Or what came quickly to mind? Okay, you see that. So what do we see? Do we see a difference? That was very important, Kelly. Some of us, di ba meron tayong parang sa psychology, is it a glass half filled with water or glass half empty? No, there's another one that shows you the figure like that. What do you see? Diba? Parang ganyan. Okay, what do you see? Is it a vase or two faces? Diba? Do you see that in psychology books? Iba-iba tayo kung ano yung nakikita natin. So dito, parang what do you see on the spot when the information comes to you? Do you notice the difference? Yung kanya, nakita niya difference, di ba? Yung isa mabilis, yung isa nakita niya similarity, di ba? Kita niya, sabi niya, mayroong patterns. They are quite, ano masabi mo kanina? Yung nakita mong patterns doon? There's too many things at the same time to see. See, those are similarities, no? Or so many differences. To Kelly, this is different. It's like the equivalent of this type of questions, the half-empty glass or the half-full glass. There's a clue, okay, to our processing of information. Sometimes they would conclude from this whether you're positivist or pessimist, essentially those kinds of things. No? Do you see the difference or do you see the similarities? Are you an integrator or an analyst? Diba? Ang analyst tends to see the differences. But somebody who is able to, very good at synthesizing things, able to see the similarities right away. So they're able to form generalizations, while others ask so many kinds of questions because they are able to analyze things, see the differences, they are focused on the differences. So again, those two are different types of personalities. How do we become such? How do the patterns emerge that way to our experience? So Kelly, that was the challenge. How do you explain that without going to the explanations already there? Like, it must be because of our sexual experience. It must be because of our traumatic experience, the way our parents raised us, the kinds of books we read. So those things are outside ourselves. And they are ready-made explanations. So Kelly's kind of psychology is radical because you have to depend on what you are hearing from this person, what you are observing. You don't have to go outside that person. You make sense of the person within his or her own terms. Doon ka magsisimula. You start from where the person is differentiating the world around him. So we can be loose or tight in the way we look at things. Okay? Loose or tight in the way we think, look at things. We can be tight thinkers or loose thinkers. So if you hear people saying like, oh, ang example niya, a ball is nothing but a ball. Okay? People who think that way will not be able to solve themselves. Suppose you see you are drowning and you see something you call, hold on, there's a ball, but that is only for basketball. You see? So you don't grab it, then you sink. Yeah, that is tight thinking. If you have a flat tire, You see, don't have a jack. What do? How can you change a tire? And you see a rope around, or maybe you see a big rock that you can roll in inside. You don't do it because a rock is a rock. It is not a jack. A rope is a rope. You cannot prop the car up. You cannot wear. And that shows how either loose or tight you are. You cannot go beyond what you see as the function of things. Diba? That is, to carry these are very good diagnostic indicators. So we divide the world in so many ways. It's just metaphoric. In other words, para sa kanya, dichotomous. So we have all these contrasts. And the thing about this contrast is that they are non-logical. No, napansin nyo kanina, when somebody says these are physical things, the opposite or the contrast is not necessarily non-physical. You may call them psychological, you may call them emotional, you may call them something else. But definitely they are non-logical opposites or contrasts. And that's what makes it personal. We don't divide the world or differentiate the world in the same way. We always find different differences, different similarities. See, that's what makes us personal. But always you will find a construct, a contrast. Pag nasa Filipinos, we have something here we call Philippine psychology or Filipino psychology. Psikolohiyang Filipino. No? It all started as school of thought in Diliman. We have been teaching it. Of course, there are others. For example, in LaSalle, Timothy Church, Katigbak, and so forth, they started a tradition which is different from the Diliman psychologists. They have none of this. They mostly adopted used Western literature, but proved with the instruments they developed that there are measures that cannot be developed, no, by ocean. Okay, this is the more or less a Western way of looking at personality. There are dimensions, other dimensions than openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Sabi nila meron. Filipinos have more dimensions that ought to be measured. So there are studies. Australians also have found that it's a different mix, right? You have Aborigines here. We have a different mix of, in our culture, we do have different histories. But more or less, that will be there. But there are other dimensions that are not measured by typical Western instruments. All right? So, Kelly, walang instrument na kailangan ang galing sa iyo. There's just a structure, a skeletal structure. I will ask you about your mother, father, and so forth. And these are selected roles that more or less some of us have in common. And that will be the starting point for my making sense of your behavior or thoughts. And I will ask from there. So this is another way of saying this is that we all differ from each other, but we do have something in common. Okay, he calls this the individuality corollary. We are all different from each other, and yet there's something that we have in common. All right, so we are all unique. Okay, so he calls that individuality. There's always a uniqueness with us, but there's also a commonality. Okay. Otherwise, if there's no commonality, we won't be able to interact, understand each other. His example was that of driving. We all know that we have to drive on the right side of the road, so we don't bump into each other, right? So there's a commonality. We are all grow in a culture where this thing is what we do. Okay, so we have something in common. We have individual. We have different ways of driving. Some of us drive like like a funeral car. Some of us drive like my partner drives like hell. That's one example. But he is a better driver than I am. She's already used to the Davao environment where people drive like crazy. Sorry. Actually, now it's more tame because Duterte said you can only, in some places, have a minimum of 30 kilometers per hour. Okay, 40 and closer to the heart of the city, but in the city itself you have to be 30. Outskirts of the city have 60. All right? So, ang laki ng impact. Of course, the accidents have been reduced. Who drives like crazy here? So, if you want adventure, who would you ride? Somebody who drives like my partner? Or somebody who drives like, who are the slow drivers here? Like me, for example, very slow. I have to be careful because my reflexes are not so good anymore. Diba? So, you can tell who are you going to get along with, depending on their individual characteristics and their common characteristics. By the way, when I say characteristics, that word is very important. Why? In the old days, that word described what a personality is. What kind of character do you have? What is the root word of the word character? Do you have a good moral character? What is character? What is the root word? Comes from cara. Okay, so it's Latin, di ba? Cara, which means face. In other words, you can tell something about the person by just looking at the face. That's why the Facebook is very popular. Even if you don't put your faces there, you put your pets. Okay pa rin, di ba? Because it's an equivalent of your face. I love dogs. I love cats. I love food. Di ba? Yan ang nakalagay sa profile nyo because you don't want to show your face. But that gives us nothing to understand you about, because those are, I don't see your face. The face tells you a lot. And that's where the theory of personality came from. That essentially, you can know a lot by just looking at the face of the person. So, I don't have to go through all of this, 11 corollaries, but so much to say that the theory is unique in that sense that it is stated in a very abstract form. You can develop more technical operationalization of it in terms of how do you measure. All right. I think I should stop here. I know that we need more time to process such an abstract theory. You see, the one who I got this technique, yung kaninang test ko sa umpisa, you look at his name, he's called Brian Little. He's very popular on YouTube. He is, in fact, selected as the most distinguished professor of Harvard one time. I was in touch with him when I was studying my studies. He was at Carleton. And he developed another method that improved on Kelly's repertory grid. He called it special projects analysis. Essentially, the idea is, what are people doing now? He asked people several sets of questions, but the constructs were already there. But the elements that were not there were what you would think about. He called it special projects. So what are we trying to do now, at this present, at this moment? Okay, what you have been trying to do? So he called this, sometimes people have magnificent obsessions, and at the same time they have trivial pursuits. So all the things, you're trying to fix the car, you're trying to save money for your garden, you're trying to graduate from the Open University. This is what you think about, and he thinks he can do the same thing, which is much more relevant into helping you decide what to do. If you are so mixed up with all these magnificent obsessions and trivial pursuits, and you are so confused, you can do something about it. Brian Little is a very well-versed in personality theories, very exciting lecturer, and he actually talked about this. So you can look at him. In fact, he admitted he was an introvert. He was an introvert. He is someone who would rather stay in the bathroom when some things very social is going on, let's say in the hall. And but he was able to deliver his lecture, even become a distinguished professor of psychology in Harvard University. Agreeableness, you can see his face there on Facebook, very agreeable. You'd rather not talk about neuroticism, but that's it. Okay. In other words, he improved on Kelly's theory but the basic ideas came from him. I'm glad that I got a little bit of idea of how you would size me up after my talk. In fact, I would welcome questions, even if you are ashamed to ask your questions now, because they are related to something intimate. You're free to write me. I have my Facebook. You have my email number there. I probably won't be able to help you in any way because I'm such a cool guy. Sometimes I am so emotionless. No, to tell you frankly, sometimes that's how I cope with things. I shut them out. It's probably because of my sports. I'm into target shooting and archery, pistol shooting, in fact, and compound archery. So there is a training there that is needed, a regimentation of how you manage your physique and your mental process, so that sometimes you have to be emotionless to be able to win. Otherwise, if you are affected by the fear of winning or being beaten by someone, you just have to close out everything else. There's nothing there. It's just your sight and the target, that's all. So if you can focus that way, nothing else. But this is all I see when I am, for example, when I'm pistol shooting, my world is I'm completely shut out in my, this is all you see. It's the notch of a pistol that's all black. Of course, there is a front sight. You will see it there, like that. It's also black. And there is the target is not really, it's just blurred. You don't even have to look at it. So you don't see that. You just see this little thing here. That's probably what you're saying. That moment in time when you see that tiny gap between the base of the target and that one, this part here. That's all you have to worry about. That is aligned there. This one is aligned here. This one is aligned there. There is enough of light that enters that. That is all you care about. Nothing else. That's all. That's all the thing you see. Don't care about the wind. Don't care about the heat. Don't care about the noise in the background. That's all. You shut yourself up. That is your construct. How come you can do it that way and then reach your goal? I don't know. Sometimes it happens, just happens by just following and probably making your constructs like part of your body, okay, memory. It becomes, that's the simple way of explaining it. It's that all this differentiation there is, like, you can feel wind, whether it's strong or not. You can feel whether all your senses can have that, but you shut yourself out. So it's the equivalent of someone who can to deal with the emotions, for example, can shut yourself out. Is it good or bad? Kelly was able to use his theory, to make different ways of approaching things. Like, for example, anger. He defined anger in a different way. How do you differentiate anger from anxiety? Anxiety. From threat. So he defined this in terms of personal construct theory in new terms. He just talked about that construct system. Okay? So, for example, anger, he said, is a displacement of the self. So you might have some constructs that are at the core. Okay, and some that are in the middle part, some at the periphery. So to him, anxiety would be somewhere here. So if you are able to picture that, and for example, anger is there, it's at the core. Okay, because it's going to change yourself. The new experience that comes in is something you cannot process. You get angry because it is going to challenge this. No, maybe probably even here. This is what he calls threat. It may even cost you your life. Okay, so there's a big change, of course, in your life. You will lose it. And that is the core. You want to live. But anger is a peripheral, it's something you can deal with. Because it is not there at the core. It's not going to cost you your life. So why do you deal with anger as if you have to fight and then cost you your death, cost you your life? You become so, and it's something that only causes you anxiety. It's peripheral to your core. It's very far from your core. Why don't you deal with it and just turn yourself off from it? Don't mind it. But sometimes we are ruined by our anxieties because we defined it as something that is, we don't know, maybe we cannot handle it, our anxieties. In fact, it does not change itself. So marami siyang ganyan. In fact, what he calls hostility, which is not anger, matutuwa ka sa kanyang definition. Hostility is the continued extortion of validational evidence. In other words, kung para kang scientist, yung hypothesis mo, you keep on testing it again and again. Nagawa mo na, alam mo na ang result. I-test it again and again. Parang ina-extort mo na yung results. Na ito dapat ang kalabasan nito kasi nagawa ko na ito eh. So, then you get angry. You're hostile. It's not nothing to do with the hostility, I mean the intensity of your anger. But the fact that you are testing the same hypothesis again and again, when you restate it that way, you are able to deal with it. Yun sa kanya, yun ang makikita mo ngayon, explain mo. Kasi wala na yung emotion part doon. Tingnan mo, very abstract siya eh. And you are able to use it to the benefit of the person. Ay, walay mo siya. Let's use this language. O nga, no? Ganyan. The same thing. You're testing the same hypothesis. And so forth. Okay, I have said my piece. I've run out of constructs. And, well, they're all there for you to see. I wish I could talk more other than Kelly. But there's all in the Facebook. I'm willing to share to you. You can become a friend. You can invite me, and you can read all the rest of it. Because I have made the Facebook as my corpus. Parang nandyan na lahat yung aking I think spontaneously whenever there are things, objects, and I comment on them. And it's revealing my construct. You can catch me with my constructs down, literally, by reading me in my Facebook. Of course, I cannot promise you won't go crazy, all right? Because there's so much information, so much constructs to digest. Some people, I turn them off. Because sabi niya, pag first line pa lang I question myself, I ask myself, am I going to proceed with my reading or it might destroy my day, all right? So be careful when you read it. Kasi it might just touch a sore spot. And then you begin to cry because you remember your old flame. Okay, thank you very much. I hope I made sense.